honor to welcome on the stage His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron of France.
Thank you very much, Hazan. Thank you so much for this session. And thank you very much for your words, both based on science and tradition and culture of indigenous people. Let me first thank and congratulate our host and wish her Happy National Day of our good friends of Emirates today. Colleagues, let me go directly straight to the point. Our position is that our two COPs on climate and biodiversity cannot be separated. And I think you made a perfect scientific demonstration on the complementarity of the two agendas, climate change and biodiversity together. And first, because nature is the best technology available to capture and store CO2. And we are investing a lot of money. There are a lot of innovation for carbon capture and storage mechanism, which is good. But the very best one, and the one which should not be suppressed, is forests and oceans, meaning nature. And if we have to put money on the table, this is for this solution, because they do exist, and they can preserve solutions for carbon, biodiversity, and precisely ecosystem for people and indigenous people. There is as well another reason. If we increase the economic value of natural capital in our economy, we will enable our countries with low emissions and large carbon sinks to benefit greatly from the ecological transition and making our transition much more fair, which is essential. So I just wanted to take here some commitments and make some very concrete announcements based on this philosophy. First, on forests. We organized a few months ago with some of you the first One Forest Summit in Libreville last March. But a lot of you here in this room did a lot during the past years and decades on forests. And I see my good friend, Prime Minister of Norway, and I want to congratulate your country because probably you are one of the pioneers and leaders in terms of investment on forests. And I want to commend you on the commitment of your country and your funds because you did a lot of work. But I think we collectively, and with your strong partnership and cooperation and the partnership of a lot of countries and scientists being present here, the fact that forests, which possess the most vital reserves of carbon and biodiversity, must be remunerated for what they are. And we have to remunerate countries when they protect actively these forests. And the big paradox of our world is that till now, we did put a lot of money for reforestation, but without acting in order to preserve existing forests. And in a very few forests, from Amazonia to Congo River, and precisely the three rivers and the Basin Congo, and to Southeast Asia and Papua New Guinea, and Prime Minister Marape is joining us. You have something like 15% of our Earth, but more than 90% of ecosystem of us well-known species, and more than 75% of irrecuperable carbon, which means each time we destroy these forests, this is a delay to the road of carbon neutrality, and this is part of the carbon we liberate, and we kill part of our efforts. And we kill as well a very important carbon sink. So we base an approach country by country, a new partnership, scientific partnership to measure and monitor those vital reserves, win-win economic partnership designed to create more added value locally by developing a high-quality forestry economy, involving indigenous people and local ecosystem precisely to work with those knowing the forests, living in the forests, and based on their precisely knowledge and transmission, and a partnership on innovative financing, which should make it possible to generate high-quality carbon and biodiversity credits on the basis of this strategy. And this country-by-country package, this forest package, let's say, is precisely the one we are finalizing. And today I'm very pleased to announce that 2 partnerships have already been signed, the first with Papua New Guinea for $100 million, the second with Congo-Brazzaville for $50 million, and we are finalizing one with DRC for $16 million. And these 3 countries, the third one is being finalized, are the 3 pioneers of this methodology with this new approach, new partnership, new financing. Other partnerships will follow by COP30. I would also like to say a word based on that, on the fact that we can accelerate if we develop this methodology. It's very comparable with what we do with JETP in a certain way for energy. It's based on the country-by-country approach. We gather financing and we accelerate transition. And we can do much more, and I want to thank philanthropy. I already thank countries like Norway, but a lot of Philanthropy Conservation International and a lot of you being already involved in this approach, and with whom we will do much more with additional countries. Speaking about forests and this approach, I would also like to say a word on the subject of carbon pricing. As you know, we have long defended the idea that this is the best tool for accelerating our green transition. And it is a tool that is providing its worth, as we know in Europe. It's a tool that is now being developed all over the world. However, the current system is still deficient because many of the countries that emit the least but absorb the most CO2 do not have a proper access to the carbon market. A company that emits a lot of carbon will be taxed at the borders of the European Union, but conversely, a company that invests massively in forest protection in Brazil, Gabon, Papua New Guinea will have great difficulty in generating high-quality carbon credits because the market infrastructure of carbon credits on an international scale is highly fragmented and very inefficient today. I believe that this is one of the most important tasks to be pursued between now and COP30 in Belém. We must set up an international carbon and biodiversity exchange which will enable very high-quality carbon and biodiversity credits to be traded between its members on the basis of common standards and rules. This is a critical issue, and I want to thank Dame Amelia Fawcett and Sylvie Goulard for the very good work made by our common task force, because the work you are doing on biodiversity, this new accountability, but the merger of this approach between carbon and biodiversity credits will allow us to build this new exchange system and a sort of marketplace integrated globally and allowing these countries and the private players to have a much better functioning. I want to say to our Brazilian friend, I know that President Lula, and I do share his approach, wants to do much more on that. In a nutshell, our strategy must make it possible to combine the protection of the planet and the fight against poverty and more equitable international relations. And this is why we launched this Paris Pact for Planet and People in Paris a few months ago. And these 4 Ps will be the basis to work all together following this agenda for the Brazilian G20 until the next COP in order precisely to make this work. We will have the opportunity to push this agenda together under the Brazilian leadership in G20, and before that, during a state visit I intend to make to Brazil in March 2024. I also want to make it clear to my fellow citizens of French Guiana that France has an interest in this topic also because we are present in the heart of the Amazon with French Guiana. And clearly I want here to say that we will develop a new strategy to support a high-quality forest economy in French Guiana in the coming weeks and months based on this approach. Now, the second pillar after forests is oceans. Ocean is our first carbon sink. And as you know, we will organize the next United Nations Conference on Ocean in Nice. And this is very close to what we do as well, together with Norway, on cryosphere, on glaciers and poles. But oceans is very important, and we have this initiative with Costa Rica. And I would like to pay tribute to the commitment of President Rodrigo Chavez Robles. This conference in Nice will be very important, and I just want to say a few words on that. First, we want the scientific community to come together on the ocean in the same way as it has come together on climate within the IPCC. And what we want to do is to establish a scientific consensus on ocean, but a common indicator to assess in a certain way the state of the art and to clearly monitor the situation on the ocean and to have a common measure on the progress made, but as well on the critical issues on ocean, but assessing, obviously, all the different criteria to be taken into consideration. Second, we want to make in Nice the updates of our international law. Numerous negotiations are already underway, and we are working intensively to bring them to a successful conclusion by the time of the Nice conference. I'm thinking in particular of the ratification of the BBNG agreement on the high seas, the endorsement of a new legally binding treaty on plastic pollution, and I know, Razan, how committed you are on that, and the universalization of agreements on illegal fishing. I'm also thinking of the major work we are doing to prevent the exploitation of the seabed that could bring some irreversible damage to our marine biodiversity. 24 countries have already allied with France to accept and make the same commitment, and we will continue to increase the momentum. And finally, on the fringe of the conference, we will be holding a major summit on the blue economy in Nice and Monaco in order precisely to follow up and accelerate innovation based on sea. In September 2024, finally, on the sidelines of the next UNGA in New York, we will be organizing a new One Planet Summit on water governance, the One Water Summit. And together with Kazakhstan, we will propose a series of new rules and guarantees in order to have a better cooperation globally in order to deal with water issue. Here were some critical solutions and a sort of solutions agenda I wanted to share with you. But clearly, biodiversity and climate change is the same fight and should be the same commitment at our level. Clearly, we have to accelerate, and we have to take this agenda in consideration in our trade discussion, in our national and international solution. And clearly, we have to work on the basis of science and indigenous people's solution. This is what I wanted to share with you, to thank my good friend, and I want to thank clearly the three countries engaging on this forest agenda, DRC, Congo-Brazzaville, and PNG, because they did a wonderful job. Ministers and prime ministers are here, and I want to commend them for what you did and what you're doing, and you can count on us. But forests, oceans, and water as a critical issue in order for all of us to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for really reminding us that nature conservation goes beyond boundaries, and it takes partnership between countries and within countries. And here I have to say, as president of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and as the UN climate change high-level champion for COP28, it is the non-state actors, it is the civil society, it is the indigenous peoples' organizations and youth that drive these commitments to real action on the ground and provide the much-needed science, both intrinsic and extremely valuable. Thank you very much. And with that, it is now my great honor to be joined by two leaders who are, in fact, championing actions for the oceans. His Excellency Prime Minister Sovaleni from Tonga, and His Excellency Prime Minister Gahr Støre of Norway. Whichever you prefer, sir. You prefer to speak? Prime Minister, ahlan wa sahlan. You arrive at an auspicious day. This is also the day that my country celebrates its establishment. So thank you for gracing us with your honor. Just a few weeks ago, together with President Whips of Palau, you helped close a landmark agreement, the Blue Pacific Prosperity Plan. Sir, can you tell us about it?
Right, if I use the podium.
I do not mind.
Excellencies, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, my home, the Blue Pacific region, comprised of small island developing states, but better described as resilient large ocean states, covers an ocean area of approximately 1 billion hectares, or is 5 times bigger than the USA. My home includes 30% of the world's exclusive economic zone, almost 30% of the Earth's precious coal, and we are a custodian for 20% of the most remarkable and diverse marine ecosystem on the planet. Although we did not cause the climate crisis, but many of us, it is now a question of life or death. Our islands, our life-giving ocean, our homes, and our way of life are threatened by the existential threat of climate change. No one is more aware of the urgent need for innovative strategies that harmonize nature's wisdom, science, and traditional knowledge with the financial means to take action before it's too late. A pledge was made 13 years ago to generate $100 billion per year in climate finance that will assist developing countries, particularly those most vulnerable. But only 0.22% of that global promise is reaching the Pacific small island states in any given year, enabling an abysmal 7% of the adaptation and mitigation work to be done. The difficulties of access to climate finance has an immediate effect on the decrease of impact of loss and damage that we are currently experiencing. This is not an equitable exchange by any measure. It is, in fact, the definition of climate injustice. Those that endure the most obtain the least amount of climate financing. The agreement reached on the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund and the commitments made is a welcome step forward. a cause for celebration, but it has taken almost 3 decades. The UN Global Stocktake shows us that we cannot afford to wait that long for progress. We are not on track to meet our climate goals, and our Pacific communities continue to fight back. We cannot afford to sit around and wait. We must innovate and integrate our science, utilize our traditional knowledge, and amplify the work we do with partners to navigate these rough waters. We must protect the fragile ecosystem and strengthen our food system if we are to save our homes. That is why Pacific Forum leaders last month unanimously support and have joined forces to take an ambitious approach to protect our home, our blue Pacific continent. We see clearly that natures play a critical role in achieving the Paris Agreement goals. So on behalf of the Pacific leaders, I am proud to announce Unlocking Blue Pacific Prosperity, a transformational step forward for the Pacific and the planet. Unlocking Blue Pacific Prosperity entails 3 ambitious goals. First one, 100% effective sustainable ocean management, including 30% protection of the blue Pacific continent. Second, healthy, productive people thriving because of robust food systems underpinned by resilient ecosystems. And thirdly, fit-for-purpose financing through sustainable mechanisms that create the right enabling environment to support the region's 25th strategy for the blue Pacific continent. We understand that because of its vast size, 40 million square kilometers, or almost 3 times the size of Russia, what happens to our Pacific is make or break for the planet. That's why we have committed to protecting 30% of our blue continent as we strive to protect and sustainably manage critical ecosystems. We mean to show the world that Pacific people are resilient and determined to hope, despite the tired GST report card. Finally, I want to highlight that unlocking Blue Pacific prosperity is a critical opportunity for like-minded partners to join with us as we course correct and take action. Tomorrow, Pacific leaders are gathering to launch this initiative. We'll be joined by old and new friends who understand the value of partnership and that it will take all of us working together to turn the tide. We call to action all partners who came about climate justice, nature, and people. We challenge partners in both the private and public sector to join us, the people of the Blue Pacific continent, as we face this existential threat. I thank you, Malo.
Thank you. I know that President Twips of Palau isn't able to join us here today, but I know he was a co-architect for this incredible prosperity plan for people, for nature, and for the oceans. And I hope you can join me for a round of applause for this incredibly significant plan and strategy to protect 30% of the Pacific. Thank you. Prime Minister Thrui, you personally co-chair the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. And I know your country has long stewarded also the conservation of forests. Can you tell us how Norway will contribute to the nature component of the global stocktake?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Johan Rockström, for bringing out the science and the evidence at the beginning of this session. I believe we got a strong message based on evidence and the potential of nature. And I think, just to make it simple, Madam President, don't count on nature to solve the climate crisis, but take care of nature and it will help solve it. I think that's the bottom line. I would also like to salute the President of France for his initiatives, and we are really, if I'm going to sum up what Norway is trying to achieve, putting our eggs in the basket of forest and ocean. So if we can make those two work, we are making progress. I'd like to salute Prime Minister Sovaleni on launching this ambitious Pacific Oceans Initiative, and I would also like to salute President Whips of Palau. He is a true leader, and he is co-chairing with me the Ocean Panel, which is gathering about 20 countries, 45% of the world's economic zones. And we have come together and committed to manage all ocean areas by 2025. That is 2 years from now. And we are progressing towards this goal by developing sustainable ocean plans. And here the Pacific is actually moving ahead and setting the example through this landmark decision. We invite all ocean coastal states to unite in the goal of 100% sustainable ocean management and to endorse the Ocean Action Declaration launched by the Ocean Panel today. This is real progress, and the ocean can be a real helper in reaching our goals. I'm also happy to announce that Norway is joining the Mangrove Alliance for Climate, and we will make our contributions accordingly. Then, Madam President, just to move on to forests. 15 years ago, Indonesia hosted the climate talks in Bali. Brazil, at that moment, under the leadership of Lula, launched the Amazon Fund. And on the same day, my country and the government I was proud to serve launched our initial international climate and forest initiative. And summing up today, this is the most important international contribution for the climate and for nature that my country has ever done. Since then, Norway has disbursed $5 billion to preserve tropical forests. In the beginning, this was a risky undertaking. We were paying people not to do things in order to achieve greater things. Now we see that it works, and we will sustain this effort at high levels at least through 2030. And now we see unprecedented leadership to protect the forest. And President Lula, you are first among them. You are back in office, back in leadership. You will take G20 leadership in a few weeks, and that is good news. Brazil has cut deforestation, and under President Lula's first administration by 80%. And now Brazil is doing it again with deforestation down by half in this first 10 months of a new administration. That is impressive, and this is the biggest global climate news this year. And there are more good news. Indonesia now has the lowest deforestation in 20 years, down 90% under President Jokowi's leadership. Yesterday, we announced a new contribution of $100 million to recognize Indonesia's impressive results. And this is not paying Indonesia to do things in the future. We are paying for achieved results. It will support Indonesia's actions to reach carbon-positive land sector by 2030. Colombia has the lowest deforestation in a decade. And President Petro has put forest protection at the heart of his efforts to promote lasting peace in his country. Ghana has been a pioneer in advancing a high-quality carbon market for forests, and the President is proving real African leadership here. And if I may add, Mr. President, you are also my partner at the Ocean Panel. So you'll find Ghana in the forest and you'll find Ghana in the oceans. That's great. And Ghana is one of the first countries to enter into a transaction with the LEAF Coalition to access carbon payments from some of the world's largest companies. Also good news. DRC and the Republic of Congo possess the world's second largest rainforest. They are now committed to protecting their forest and peatlands while meeting the development needs of their people. And Guyana has been able to maintain its high forest cover for decades. So, dear friends, forest countries possess the tools, if we can possess the support, to protect their forest and to do so for the benefit of their people, indigenous people, and all the rest of us. But I would say in closing that we should leave no stone unturned to mobilize more finance to help them achieve more and faster. Beyond finance, we must collaborate on technology. Norway is working to launch a new phase of our satellite program together with the Bezos Earth Fund. This is a program which will make high-resolution satellite data available on tropical forests, available to all, every month, all the time, and it will be free. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is no path to 1.5 degrees unless we meet the goal we set in Glasgow to halt and reverse forest loss this decade. I look forward to work closely with Brazil and all of you towards COP30 in Belém in 2025 and beyond. And Norway will do everything we can to support Brazil's G20 leadership when all this will be brought together in the critical agendas for survival. Thank you.